One.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the Unqualified Filmbros podcast. We're talking about a movie that I believe fails at being a comic book sequel, fails at being a musical, and fails at being a psych thriller. Of course, we all know that it's the movie that's not going to break even at the box office, but no one really cares. Joker FOLIE A DEUX. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
Uh, well, it's definitely a departure from the first film. Uh, Kind of seems like it's trying to do everything different from that, including the fact that Joker is no longer Joker. He realizes he's not Joker at the end, even though the first movie is all about him being Joker and becoming Joker. This one is about him not becoming that. So that was
Unbecoming Joker.
yeah, it was an interesting idea. I think it starts out okay. I remember actually enjoying the first like 10 minutes. It's very styled after like Shawshank Redemption or something. Or, you know, God, what's the name? The Jack Nicholson Kook House movie.
Oh, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean it's kind of bare bones in my opinion. Brendan Gleeson is kind of fun. Uh but for the most part, the movie kind of like meanders for a lot of it. Takes a while for Lady Gaga to be introduced as Harley Quinn. Um, and then they sort of just have this romance for the rest of the movie where they're singing and dancing in their own fantasy world. And that's the musical aspect, which I have to criticize also. I think Lady Gaga is fine. Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck is it's kind of painful to listen to. And they're also, they're not original songs or anything. They're just taking whatever old
Yeah,
school
they're
songs
covers.
from the
They're all
60s and
covers.
70s. And they're also taking swing songs and all this old school stuff. And there's very noticeable like auto tune. I think they're also slowing down the tracks. But it sounds really bad sometimes. Like some of their lines, it's very clear. You can hear the auto tune on. And for swing music, and for like the whole aesthetic of 60s 70s, I don't really know what time period they're in, I'll be honest.
I think it's like the 80s or maybe
is it
90s or something.
Yeah, I think the 80s, early 80s.
is it the 80s? Definitely not the 90s, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
the first one was like very 70s, at least stylistically.
This takes place 2 years after the first one.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
believe it's like 1981 or something, 82.
Well, whatever.
Doesn't matter. Early 80s.
It's a lot of like old school stuff. And yeah, I couldn't get into it. It's weird. It's
Yeah.
not very fun.
I mean, it's very slow, like you said, Ben. And then when it tries to pick itself up, nothing really happens. I mean, except for the few exceptions, I think. It's it felt like the first one was kind of building to something kind of interesting, and then it ends up with this one. They kill him.
Yeah,
So
he's dead.
they, they close the door on anything
Yeah.
after they had already kind of taken it all away throughout the runtime of Joker 2. Like, I don't know.
I criticized the first movie for being Joker, but really not having any semblance of need to be in Gotham or using any of this stuff. Um, and so I don't
It
know
could have
why.
just been a crime thriller with Joaquin Phoenix in the lead.
Yeah, but it really feels like it's not very respectful to the material. I mean, lots of people have written like Batman, Joker, all these comics for 70, 80, I think 80 years now. It
Yep.
was like the 40s. And I mean, he's sort of like he includes. I mean, the worst part is that he includes all these names. Like Harvey Dent is the lead prosecutor. You got Harley Quinn in there, but none of them really represent any aspect aside from like a few similarities, but they really do their own thing, which is fine, but it just doesn't seem like it treats the material with any respect and also doesn't do anything with it. And aside from that, it's just sort of a meandering movie. I mean, you kill Joker at the end. Joker decides he's not actually Joker. He's just like this miserable twat who wanted to yell at people. Like that's a sad ending. I mean, it's um it's different, I guess, but it just doesn't make sense when the whole first movie was how much society had failed him. It's like, so you're telling me the whole themes of the first movie are actually fake because of the reveal in this movie? It I don't I don't know what to do with this. I don't love the first movie, but it works as a movie. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think my thoughts are pretty similar. I think stylistically, Todd Phillips does a lot of what he did in the first movie, and it works.
Oh, he's
Um,
he's doing very different things in this one, I would say, because he's brought on the musical aspect. He's doing lots of different colors and some of the fantasies.
that's
Uh,
true. There's none of that really in the first movie.
the first one was
Um,
mainly it was patterned like Scorsese and Taxi
it
Driver,
was yeah, it looked like Taxi Driver and the crime thrillers of the '70s,
mainly Taxi
which
Driver.
made it work astoundingly well visually. Like we understood that this was a different Gotham than any that we had seen before, and I think that Todd Phillips deserved a lot of duly so got a lot of praise for the world that he built in the first movie. And now in this one, yeah, you're introducing all of the fantasy elements, but it just feels from a story perspective, it kind of feels empty. Like
Yeah, well,
not a lot really happens in this movie.
it's fine if there are things going on in people's heads, but the character inner turmoil, inner demons, whatever he's dealing with, these two sides of him, being Joker and being Arthur Fleck. It's a very uninteresting ordeal because, frankly, I don't know what either of them are. It's never been really explained up until that point. It's like, all right, so the Joker is the people that wanted him to be this thing, but he was acting this way before those people, were like that. Um, so I'm a little confused here as to what's what. Again, the first movie just not really making sense with the second movie. And the second movie's whole ordeal being, is he the Joker? Well, how am I supposed to figure that out or care if I don't know what either of them are? How to separate them?
Yeah, I think if this had been a first Joker story, obviously we knew a lot about this version of Arthur Fleck coming into this movie. Um, after having seen the first movie. But if this was our first introduction to this Arthur Fleck and this Joker, I think it might have worked a little bit better because
I
a
don't think
Joker.
so. I
Uh,
I think I would have the same problem. I don't know what is this Joker versus Arthur Fleck dilemma. Um, you have to actually set it up
I
before
don't know. It
you
feels like a
start.
story that Todd Phillips wanted to tell, and I think he could have stood to gain something from talking to James Gunn about it.
I think he could have stood to gain something by talking to anybody. Like it
Yeah,
sounds like he didn't want to talk to anybody
or
and
test
ignored
screen film.
everybody's advice and,
I don't know if James Gunn could. I just don't think these movies should have happened. Like again, I don't think Joker is a bad film, but I have the same criticisms. It doesn't really explore anything new. It does something old. It's like a J.J. Abrams, Star Trek or something. He put on a bunch of lens flares, and he just made a good like '80s action film again. Um, but it's not doing anything revolutionary. It's fine. The acting is really good. You let Joaquin Phoenix be a weird, creepy guy, that's always going to go great. He's great at playing those guys. Probably because he might be fun, but aside from that, he's a great actor. Um, but there's like spatterings of, DC and Gotham lore. They meet Thomas Wayne. It's like there's this weird storyline where Thomas Wayne is not his father, but he thinks he is. And there are these side plots even in that first movie where they go nowhere and they serve no purpose other than to make use of the landscape that he has, but there's no reason for it to be there in the first place. So you're putting it in this like fictional universe that you're not actually using much of anything there. It's just a backdrop. And then you recreate Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy. That's fine. He did a good job doing that, but why would I ever expect him to pull off whatever this is? When they said it was like a musical and that, they were going to be doing all this crazy stuff, I knew it was going to be terrible because he's a good comedy director, but I don't think he's shown anything that he can accomplish something that crazy and creative. Um, it could work, but you need to do it way differently. And for a musical, I don't care if Joaquin Phoenix is like, raspy in the film. Let him sing a little bit more. Do something because you can't have a musical that sounds so flat like that. And also write original
His
songs.
vocal quality was based a lot in who his character was, and I read an interview with Lady Gaga about her vocal performance in this movie, because obviously she is a brilliant vocalist in real life.
Hmm.
She says that she had to sort of train herself to unlearn some of her technique because Harley Quinn would not have the vocal training that she did.
Yeah, I hate that
Yeah.
though. Like,
And
I don't
I
care.
can't help but just
Nobody,
really hate that
yeah, and nobody in musicals has
because
vocal talent. Like, it's a fantasy.
yeah.
Like, am,
Also,
am I supposed to,
if most of these musical numbers are going to happen in fantasy situations, why can't they have the perfect vocal talent? We know that these two can sing.
like, am I supposed to expect Jed from Oklahoma to actually know how to sing? No, but he does it anyway, and he sounds great in a real Broadway musical because that's what it should be. It's a fantasy. All right, we're not making. You don't have to make things make sense in this world. You're doing musicals for half the movie, and they're fantasy land. All right, things don't have to make sense like that.
It wasn't even half the movie. It was like
And you're
it's
you're you're
six
nerfing.
songs in 2 hours and 20 minutes
You are nerfing your best singer for what? Why would you do that?
for realism.
All these songs are perfect for her style of singing, like all the Frank Sinatra, all the swing stuff, and yet she can't really go off. And I noticed that. And they even put auto tune on her voice. It's fucking pissing me off. I hate auto tune when it's just so unnecessary. I wish people would learn how to use it. Everybody just puts way too much on. It's noticeable if you can hear it. Anyway, I'm done with my music rant.
Um, what did you guys think of the animated sequence at the beginning of the movie?
I didn't know what the fuck was happening for a
Yeah.
second. I thought that they pulled a cruel trick on me and they put in some like animated Joker. Actually, maybe I wanted to watch a full version of that instead.
It would have been interesting at
I
least.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
I thought it was different. I thought it was, it reminded me of the cartoons I grew up watching. Like
Yeah, no, it's
it
fun
just
slapstick cartoons.
it didn't take itself too seriously.
That
The
that is very much in the spirit of like actual old Joker comics and Batman
Hmm.
comics, He was very much the Joker. It's like prankster. I mean, obviously he did crime, but it was always a bit of a everything was a bit of a joke. That's where the Adam West like Batman stuff came from.
yeah,
Much more
and
ridiculous.
and with Jokers that we've seen, Mark Hamill, the animated Joker, and Jack Nicholson, and even Heath Ledger to a certain extent, have been playful characters where you get the sense that they are this uh, clown prince of crime in Gotham.
Yeah, I
With
mean they all have funny moments, but like with Arthur, the
right,
whole
with
thing is that he isn't funny.
Yeah, it's really
right.
depressing.
It's like an anti-Joker Joker. And in the first movie, you sort of I get it because we're seeing how, oh, this is his, it sounds cliche, but this is his origin story for becoming the Joker. And at the end of the movie, when he kills Murray, it's, this descent into, from sort of mild mannered, meek, unfunny but big dreams Arthur Fleck into willing to kill to get ahead, to take care of the problems that society has foisted upon him. And then that's all really undone in this movie,
I
where
think
it's
it's
just Arthur is sad in prison and Harley is his own sort of way out of what he's done to himself. And it just, it falls apart from the end of the last movie, where I wanted to see more. The idea of a split personality is ridiculous in this entire movie, but I wanted to see more of the Joker Arthur Fleck that we got in the last act of the first movie, and he barely appears. That Joker barely appears in this movie,
well.
which is a letdown for a sequel.
So first, I think it's very reactionary because he clearly, Todd Phillips clearly saw everyone calling him out for doing King of Comedy and Taxi Driver combined. Like if you didn't have the Joker paint on, I mean, it would be like a carbon copy at some points. They even do the taxi driver thing. Like, come on, dude. At least show a little bit restraint. um,
You're also casting De Niro.
yeah, you're also casting De Niro and the opposite of his role in King of Comedy. Anyway, so there's that, but also, where would you go? Like the whole reason that Joker is not a very is a very interesting character, but he only works as a foil, is because what are you going to do with that? All right, so he's lost his mind, and now he's a crime prince of Gotham. What are you going to do with that? Oh, maybe this guy who's killing everyone falls in love or something. It creates complications because there's a rule in screenwriting where you, for a protagonist like this that does a pseudo hero's journey, you're supposed to like them a little bit, and he would not be likable at a certain point. Like if he kept on that trajectory, it would just be a very problematic protagonist to have that you couldn't really do anything with because his restraint has been lifted out. The only interesting character depth to him has been taken away because he's been, unchained. So there's a reason why people try not to give the Joker backstory. It's not a good idea. They do it in Batman. That's fine. That's one of the only like real backstories that has ever been written, which is the Ace Chemicals spill. I think it's from the Long Halloween, where he dresses up as Red Hood and he falls into a vat of chemicals, and then he comes out as Joker.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, Phillips frustrates me with this because in 2019, months before the first movie even came out, he said that he wrote the movie to be that movie. There was no intention for a sequel. He didn't want to do a sequel. It was just making that movie to make that movie and tell that story. And I don't know if WBD or if DC, if somebody said, here's a crap load of money, make a sequel, and he said, fine, I'll do it.
they probably did. It
I
made a
don't know
billion
how the
dollars.
sequel came about, but
But
and we have talked about a lot of unnecessary superhero
it
sequels,
said
comic book movie sequels, excuse
it,
me.
it came out of Joaquin Phoenix's dream.
No, that's where the concept for the story came, but it was already agreed to be, there was already a sequel planned
Oh,
after
well, that's fine. I mean,
that's where Todd Phillips got the story for it to be a musical, was Joaquin
look,
Phoenix's dream.
I have no problem with someone making a sequel, even if they intend the first thing to be a one-off. has been done plenty of times. It's just whether or not you do it well and whether the first movie is good enough and has enough there for you to continue. My answer to
The
both of
first
those
movie,
would be no.
the first movie is good enough and has enough there. It's just that where they took it in the direction in which they took it for the
Not
sequel is not good. It wasn't. This movie was not a story worth telling.
yeah, but frankly, I don't think the first movie is really worth telling. There's a million movies that say it better, and
So
it
we're just gonna
it
like
takes a lot from those movies.
we're gonna put the Joker on trial. That's the core element of this story.
Well, where are you gonna go? What are you gonna
But we're
do?
not even in the courtroom all that much either, right?
No,
Like,
it's like four scenes.
you get maybe 10 minutes worth of courtroom scenes throughout the whole movie, 15 minutes. And it's like, okay, if you're gonna do that, let him represent himself from the beginning, or like have him fire Catherine Keener earlier.
Yeah,
Like,
it takes a lot of time before he returns to Joker, only to be like, guys, I'm not that guy anymore.
yeah.
That's essentially what happens because he's wimpy, and then Harley Quinn's like, yeah, go be the Joker. You can do it. I love you. I'm gonna have sex with you. I'm beautiful. Um, and then he's the Joker for a little bit, and then he just breaks down. He's like, I'm not the Joker. That's it. That's the whole. That's the whole arc for him. I mean, obviously, there's like more
And it's
detail, but
it's too
there's not
simple
enough
for a
going
movie.
on.
It's too simple and it's too like easily done in this movie for it to be 2 hours and 20 minutes.
There's also there's a key thing missing, right? Tension.
There's a lot of things missing.
So, well, yes, but there's a key thing missing from any good movie. You have to have tension. There has to be a reason. There has to be something propelling it forward, and there's nothing. There is nothing propelling it forward. He's sort of slowly becoming Joker again, I guess, but we already ended the movie like that. Um, so essentially, it's just like he's slowly approaching Doomsday to his death, and he's like, it's like, yeah, that's gonna happen, and he's just gonna go crazy up until that point. Like, what am I supposed to get out of each scene?
But he doesn't get crazier in this movie.
Well, that's the thing, is that whether he
His
does or
entire,
not,
like,
it doesn't
the
matter.
first movie, the
It's
first
all
movie,
irrelevant.
one of the best parts of Joaquin Phoenix's Oscar-winning performance is you can clearly see a marked descent through the entire story of the movie, through his entire character arc. And in this movie, it's the back and forth of will he or won't he be the Joker? And it doesn't. We've said it a lot tonight. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And then there's Harley Quinn, who just shows up. I don't really get what her deal is. She's a rich girl who's really mentally ill because she decides to voluntarily commit herself to meet a um, quintuple homicide convict. And then she really wants him to be the Joker up until he probably dies, I guess. And they just have fantasies singing together.
I
And
mean,
then
up
when he
until the
decides
two of
he's
them are
not
on the
the Joker,
staircase.
huh?
Yeah.
When the two of them are on the staircase in the third act, and he basically comes out and tells her, "No, that's not me." She's like, "All right, I'm out.
Yeah, he's
See
like,
ya."
sorry, man. I really just want the Joker. And I don't know what that character is. I guess it's supposed to be a parallel to the mob that want the Joker, but for their own needs. But like, what am I supposed to get out of that? This is not a story that you can transplant anywhere else. Like this has no parallel to anything I'd ever find in real life, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
I
just
don't know what to do with it. I don't. It's not the worst thing in the world. I just don't. I don't like it.
it's frustrating because like we all enjoy comic book movies, we all enjoy comic book adaptations, but to see a sequel that was so clearly forced to be made.
It's not a comic book movie. The first one wasn't either.
Right, but you're using comic book material as your source,
Yeah,
Yeah, but
as
then
your
you don't do
basis.
anything with the comic book material. Like there's like all that's there is, oh yeah, Arkham exists, or oh yeah, Harvey Dent is a character here.
Thomas Wayne is your father.
Like you don't get any of the personality of Gotham at all, really.
No, you
No.
don't.
If you want a good Taxi Driver remake, do the Batman, which actually has so many original things going on. It's just shot like, the noirs of the 70s.
The Batman
Whereas
is
Joker
so
literally
well.
takes the plot points from two movies and just combines them with Joker paint. Like, I'm sorry, I don't have anything against, doing something like that, like a remake. Brian De Palma's done plenty of them, but there's nothing there. You added no, in fact, you detracted from it. You detracted from those movies. I think that's why I'm so upset. It's like there's just the bare bones those movies combined, but without any of the nuance, without any of the fun. Even a Taxi Driver, there's jokes. Um,
Oh yeah.
there's like one of my favorite jokes in that. One of the taxi drivers is like, "Did you know in California, um, if two gay guys get married and they divorce, um, they have to pay you alimony?" Or God, what was it? I forget the joke. It was. I'll look it up.
Come on, you've seen the movie like a billion times.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember. It's something about two gay guys in California, um, and it was like the reverse of what should happen.
It's a great setup. I'd love to hear the punchline one day.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, the joke ends
Yeah,
with, "Oh wow,
I
they're
think
really progressive out there."
I think what happened with my viewing experience of this movie, and first of all, I was one of like two people, maybe three people in the theater to see this.
Yeah, there were like four people in my theater.
It is performing atrociously at the box office, worse than Morbius for
Well,
box office returns, and it cost more.
that's what you
So
get when you do a movie that is completely unlike the original that made
yeah,
$1 billion. If you're making money, go ahead, copy another Scorsese movie. Go for it.
is this movie as bad as Morbius? No, but it's not good. It's a bad movie.
I don't want to watch either of them. I know that's a hot take, but
Yeah, I would not particularly enjoy a rewatch of either of
yeah,
these
I
movies.
think we have a consensus. Movie's not good. All right.
Okay, well, that will do it for this episode of the Unqualified Film Bros podcast. Um, you can go see Joker Folie à Deux if you really want to, spend 2.5 hours of your time
It's
doing that.
it's a
But
it's a free world. Go see it if you want. Would not
yeah,
recommend.
it's yeah, would not recommend. Anyway, we are heading back to 1975 next week, watching a close to real-time reenactment of the first ever episode of Saturday Night Live. We're talking about Saturday Night next week. So, looking forward to that one. Should be a whole heck of a lot of fun. Yeah, I got nothing else. Have a good night.
Good
Night.
night.